All right, tonight I'm going to be talking to a lot of y'all on a personal basis because we're going to be talking about anger. You got that, didn't you, Terry? Anger management. Biblical anger management. Now, I'm talking to myself, though. I'm honest with you about it. It's easy for all of us from time to time to be upset and angry. And some people are a little bit quicker on the draw than others when it comes to anger. I think I probably used to be one of them before I got sick. Now I'm too sick to get angry. But anyway, in all honesty, I want us to look at what the Bible teaches about anger and see if we can figure out ways that we can prevent that from causing us any problems. I know I was saying to someone, they called me on the telephone and asked me to pray for them, and they said they had gotten so angry that they'd been sick for a week because they had gotten so angry. And I know that's possible. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I mean, you can get upset and get angry and all, and it'll stay with you long term, and it'll cause problems in your life. So I began to read and study about some of the things in the Bible that talks about anger. And it all started back in the very beginning. If you'll turn with me to Genesis chapter 4, verse number 6, we're going to look here at one of the first two that we ever have record of as far as children is concerned. Genesis chapter 4, verse number 6. Bobby, we're going to start with you over there.
So the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen?"
Okay. Now, remember in the background of this and in the premise of this right here, God had told them to make a sacrifice. And, of course, you all remember Cain, he gave of the fruits of the ground, and then Abel, he gave what he had, was his animal sacrifice. And it wasn't exactly what God expected, except he had more favor toward Abel in his sacrifice than that of Cain. And then the Bible said that Cain himself, God asked a question: Why are you upset? Why are you wroth? And he says, "Why is thy countenance fallen?" In other words, he was angry and didn't really understand why he was angry, even though he knew that God had more respect for his brother Abel because of his sacrifice and because of the fact that he had given his sacrifice by what God had given the instructions to do. So, this is the first account we have of anger, of one brother against another. Do you all remember the end results of this? What happened? He killed his brother. Now, you know, there's people out there that get angry, and sometimes they get angry enough to do terrible things in life. And this is one case in the Bible where a brother killed another brother. You know, they had the same mom, same dad. They were brothers, and Cain killed his brother Abel. And we know because of that, y'all remember the punishment that God placed upon him. You know, he wandered all the days of his life and around and never did find reconciliation for what he had done. You know, he lived a miserable life from that standpoint on. And God saw to that. So this was the first occasion that we have of anger. Now, there's a lot of other things in the Bible that points us in the direction of how we should handle anger. Now, I'm a person that has had a quick switch, as somebody says, and get angry and get upset and have done things that I wished 1,000 times I'd never done. Well, as you grow older and you begin to see, but one of the things that helped me most is studying in the Bible the subject of anger. So I want us to go now to Psalms 37, verse number 8. Psalms 37, verse number 8. I'm going to move to my right side, Betty. We'll go to the corner with you.
Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil.
Okay. The word cease. Y'all know what that word means in the King James Version? Stop. Stop. That's right. He said, cease from anger and forsake wrath. Now, you know, I can remember when I was a little boy, my grandpa, if he ever told you, if you ever got in trouble and you got a whipping for it, and he'd say, boy, you better get glad, and you better put a smile on that face. And you couldn't hardly do that because you done had your backside wore out, and it's hard to do. But at the same time, cease from anger. Stop. There ought to be a way to get around it. He said, you quit. What the word means, cease. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Don't let it fester. And some people say, well, I get mad and I can't get over it. Well, the Bible doesn't teach us that we can't get over it. The Bible does teach us that we can get over it. And we're going to be looking at some of those verses tonight that should help us. He said, fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. Now, what does that mean? He says, you cease from anger, you forsake wrath, but he said, fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. What do you think that part of that verse means? Don't think about getting even. Don't think about getting any worse than where you are at this point in time. You're already mad, and you need to forsake wrath, and don't let it fester and get to a point. I was talking to a friend of mine this afternoon on the phone. He'd called me and told me to pray for a family over in 5 Points in Cleveland County. A man shot his brother-in-law over his dog this afternoon. And these guys live next door and have lived next door to each other for years and years and years. And something came up and he shot his brother-in-law over the dog. And he said now he's in a terrible situation. He's shot, and his brother-in-law probably was going to die. They don't know yet. He hadn't died yet. But he called me just when Vicki and I were coming down here to tell me about it. Said, please pray for this guy. He got upset and shot his brother-in-law over a dog. Now, they said that whatever occurred that brought this on happened early this morning. The shooting didn't happen until about an hour and a half ago. So evidently there was something in that, fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. He must have been thinking about it all day long or something, and it just kept on and on until it got to this point. But now, my point is that God said, or the psalmist said here, you cease from anger, you quit it, you forsake wrath, and you fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. Proverbs 6, verse 34. Let's look at that one. Let's go to the book of Proverbs, chapter 6, verse number 34. Let's see. Let's go back over here. Tina, can you get that one for me?
For jealousy is the rage of a man, therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance.
For jealousy is the rage of a man. Let's talk a little bit about that and see if we can come up with something on this. What does it mean to be jealous? Anybody got any idea about that? Envious. Envious. That's a good word. There's a lot of things out there that people are jealous about. There are certain things that people get upset about. If they think somebody's doing a little better than they are, you know what I'm saying? If maybe it looks like they're prospering a little better, maybe things seem like it's going a little better for this one over here, and I don't like it. I'm mad. Well, what made me mad? Jealousy, envy, Now, people says, well, it could also mean like a man told me one time, he said, I'm not a jealous man about my wife. I said, that's good, I'm not either. He said, wouldn't it be bad if you had a wife that nobody wanted to look at, and all. He said, that'd be terrible, wouldn't it? And me and him got talking, we got to laughing about it, because I'm not a jealous person. I never have been about my spouse. I'm just not, never have. But there's a lot of people that get all upset about anything. I know there's people out there that, they can't stand for anybody to talk to their spouse or look at their spouse. And I'm talking about men and women. Women's the same way, Y'all want to agree with that or not, ladies? Sometimes ladies get all upset, But now, jealousy is the rage of a man. People can get all bent out of shape and to a point that they can cause lots of problems. Therefore, he will not spare in the day of vengeance. In other words, God doesn't like that, And if somebody's doing better than you are, it seems like they're doing better than you are, you know what how we ought to feel about that? Boy, they doing good. I hope I can do just as good. You know, it's important to see these little things. This is life. And I was talking about it today with a friend of mine. He called me on the phone, and we were talking about subjects, and I told him I was going to talk about jealousy tonight. I was going to talk about anger, and we got in a good long conversation. But he said he'll not spare in the day of vengeance. In other words, God doesn't expect you to bring jealousy into judgment. Any thoughts or comments? Let's look at Proverbs 12:16. See if we can figure this one out. Proverbs 12:16. Let's see, I'm back to my right-hand side. Let's see, Sandy Goodwin.
A fool's wrath is known at once, but a prudent man covers shame.
I remember, you know, have you ever heard somebody say, well, don't act like a fool? Anybody ever heard that before? Even Linda's shaking her head over there. Said, don't act like a fool. Well, how's a fool act? Well, look at what he said. A fool's wrath is presently known. If somebody gets all bent out of shape and upset, and jealousy is the bottom line of that, sometimes people act up and do things that's crazy and act like a knucklehead. He said, but a prudent man covereth shame. What does a prudent, what do you suppose that means? Anybody got a different translation word there after that? Smart, yeah. Huh? Wise. Smart, wise. But a prudent man covereth shame. In other words, go ahead and handle it. A fool's wrath is presently known. Don't act up about it. Just ease on through it, and move on through it, and manage it. You know, it's the way it should be. And a lot of times that may be a little easier said than done, but it needs to be that's part of life, the way we live our life. We need not to be a fool where the wrath is presently known, you know. Somebody said, well, I acted a fool. I got to go back and apologize. I've heard people say that before, you know. Some families can't have a family reunion. Y'all know that? That's why you don't go. Well, in all honesty, that's true. A fool's wrath is presently known. And I'm not going to comment on that, Terry. I love Terry. He's kind of like myself. But anyway, a fool's wrath is presently known. That means if we act a fool, you know, it's going to be known, you know. And sometimes people do that. You know, they all get bent out of shape and do things that they shouldn't do. Now, Proverbs 14:17. Gary Bragg, I'm going to call on you on this one.
He that is soon angry doeth foolishly, and a man of wicked devices is hated. And then 29.
29.
He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly.
Okay. You know, sometimes it pays to think about where you're at with your thoughts. And, you know, sometimes with your anger, it pays to stop and think about it before you act, you know. And I can tell you this, I could never be a policeman. You know, these guys that are policemen, you know, some of the things that happens to these guys, I feel so bad for them sometimes. You know, because some of them get spit on, and some of them get physically assaulted, and they're trying to uphold the law. Well, you know, if they spit on you, you can't spit back. You know, if they assault you, you're not supposed to assault back. All this stuff, you know, they're kind of got their hands tied. They're enforcing the law. Now, not all policemen act decently in order to do that, to enforce the law. But all these guys that I know about, that I'm thinking about, they do. They've had horrible things happen to them, and if it had been happening to me, I couldn't be a policeman because I'd done be in jail somewhere. But it's all because of wrath and anger. And in this passage, he that is soon angry dealeth foolishly. Now, you know, that's the quick switch we always talk about. You know, some people can't help getting upset quickly because they have a quick temper, you know. That's a sad thing, you know, that some people do not have the full control to be able to think about it before they act, you know. I know in my family, you know, I come from a long line of them that was soon angry and they dealt foolishly, you know. A lot of times their quick temper got them into trouble, you know, and they stayed into trouble all the time because they had that quick temper. Now, it takes time to manage that as you grow older, and you'll get old, Terry. No, but I mean seriously, honestly, when you really and truly grow older, things sort of have a tendency that you can do a little better with it. You know, you can think about it a little longer. You can manage it a little better. You know, and you can think about it, you know, in terms of what's going to be the reconciliation for my anger. You know, what can or might happen. Now, in this passage, he said, he that is, Gary read the last part of this, he that is slow to wrath is of great understanding. Now, he that is slow of wrath, he's thought about it, or she's thought about it. It could be a he or a she in this. They've given themselves time to think about it. And in order to find yourself not in a situation where you can't get yourself out of it, it's just like, you know, just like the man said today that called me about shooting his brother-in-law over a dog. You know, after you pull the trigger, it's too late. And, you know, I can imagine tonight that guy's probably thinking, boy, I wish I'd never done that, you know. I mean, can't call it back, you know. But that's what we're talking about here. How does it work? He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding. That's giving thought to it before you act upon it. You know, and that's, sometimes it may take a little maturity, spiritual maturity, to give thought to something before you act upon it. Need to include funerals. Y'all don't need me to talk about where I've been with funerals. You know, I've been there when they pull guns, and I've been there when they pull knives. I've been there when they've been fighting. I've been there when they've had to get the law, and then they had to call back up because they didn't have but one officer, and they had 9 fights going on. And this is in funerals, you know. It's amazing, you know, how things work like that. And you can ask Jim Thompson. Me and him laughed about it a lot of times. He said, boy, we in for one this weekend. I said, really? He said, yeah. And so he knew ahead of time. He said, we've already had it one time down here with him, and this one died. And sure enough, about the 3rd bench over, just in a few minutes, that one jumped the bench, and there's a fight going on right here, right where I was standing, right beside me there, you know. Call old Nathan and them, get them up there. They had to go the other night up there, you know. It was a bad one. But anyway, I don't know. I'm glad you brought that up, funerals. I need to write a book about some of the things I've seen. I seen one guy pick a tombstone up, and he was so mad he didn't want to hit nobody or nothing, but he just reached, got this big old tombstone and picked it up and started walking off with it because the name wasn't right. A wrathful man. Let's talk about this. Slow to wrath, great understanding. But what about Proverbs 15:1? Nicole, I'm going to get you on that one. Proverbs 15:1.
A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger.
Read verse 18 right there too in Proverbs 15.
A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife.
Okay. Now, a soft answer turneth away wrath. I thought a lot about how grievous words stir up anger. You know, sometimes somebody can say something and it just absolutely triggers everything in the world as far as people getting upset and angry. And that's what our subject is about, being angry. Got to be careful about how we let things. Somebody said, you just let it roll off of you. but sometimes it's hard to do that, is it not? I mean, sometimes people can say things and it don't roll off of you. I mean, it kind of slaps you right in the face, don't it? Well, a soft answer turneth away wrath. In other words, putting a little thought into the words that you speak. Put a little thought into those things that you say, you know. And it's apt as not, it won't stir up anger if you put a little thought into it. And it don't hurt to think about what you say before you say it, you know. Been many a marriage that's fell on the rocks because somebody didn't think about what they said before they said it, you know. Been many a relationship with friends and family that didn't work out because they didn't think about what they said before they said it, you know. And that's sad. It works out that way. But grievous words stirs up anger. The last part of what she read there, the wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. A wrathful man, that's somebody that really and truly, you know, it takes a while to gain self-control to a point that you can manage a situation. Sometimes it gets out of hand, and you got to manage it, you know. And that's what this is talking about. A wrathful man, somebody that just really and truly has a hard time. This is a neat subject to study about because it's something all of us we can attribute to our life, you know, how it is that people get all upset and angry, and sometimes it may be us that does that. Everybody in this room's been mad before, right? You know, I know it's one guy almost big as old Terry back there, and he's got a little bitty wife, and he told me, he said, I don't like to make her mad. He said, that woman's rough. You get to thinking, you know, a great big old strong man, you know, a little bitty woman, that woman's rough.
I've always said if she weighed 200 pounds, I'd be scared.
You might ought to be anyway. All right, let's look at Proverbs 17 and verse 19. Let's come up front. Sarah? Yeah, 19 and 19.
A man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if he rescue him, he will have to serve him.
Okay. A man of great wrath, she says, shall suffer punishment. You know, I've thought about this, y'all, and how could Christ have ever allowed them to do all that they did to him, knowing that he could stop that at any moment in time? He could have called all those legions of angels, and one angel could have destroyed them all. How in the world could he have ever done that? You know, he must not have been in any way, shape, form, or fashion a wrathful man. That's right. Now, you're right, Lamar. And you know, the love he had for his father was of great reconciliation of what was happening to him. A man of great wrath shall suffer punishment. And for if thou deliver him, yet thou must do it again. So that's something to think about. A man of great wrath shall suffer punishment. And a man of great wrath shall suffer punishment. Have you ever been around somebody that just, for some reason or another, they're mad from the time they get up to the time they go to bed? Nicole shaking her head. I know it ain't you, Terry. But in all honesty, there's some people that get up mad and they stay mad all day long. Even Nancy shaking her head. And they stay mad all day long. And for some reason or another, it's just kind of like what Bobby said. You know, they haven't learned, you know. I don't know about y'all, but if I get mad enough, sometimes I get sick. I get so mad. You know, that's not good. That's not good. You know, it may be like the boy that lived down the road from me and Vicky. I won't mention his name, but he got up one morning and his car wouldn't crank. Well, he picked up a big rock, and he meant to throw it and hit the car, but he throwed it and he hit the windshield, knocked the whole windshield out of his car. I mean, just broke it all up, you know. And he come back across the road, and he said, I know you saw me do that, didn't you? I said, yeah, I was fixing to go to work. I said, I seen you do it. He said, I didn't mean to break my window. He said, I just going to hit the side of the car. But you know, that's the way things happen sometimes. You know, people let their life get out of control. Proverbs 22 and 24. Proverbs 22 and 24. Proverbs 22, 24. Ain't Burley? You want to read that for me?
Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go.
Verse 25 is the conclusion of that.
Lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul.
Okay, let's kind of analyze this. Don't make friendship with an angry man, with a furious man. Don't go. He says, reason being, you learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. If you're around somebody that's mad all the time, you know what's going to happen to you before you know it. Even Michelle's saying, you get mad too, won't you? Well, you know, I don't know about y'all, but you know, it's no fun to be upset and mad. It's just not fun at all, you know. And I've had people say, well, we've been married 40 years and ain't never had an argument. Somebody done told a lie, you know. But, you know, people can't, I mean, you can't be mad all the time. You can't be upset all the time. And the reason for that is you learn the ways and you get a snare to thy soul. In other words, if somebody's mad all the time and you're around them, you know what's going to happen to you before you know it? You're going to get mad too, ain't you? You know, you're going to get upset too. And you know, that's kind of like the television. I don't know about y'all, but I have to turn it off. You know, I can only watch it a little while, and then I got to turn it off because I don't like what's happening. You know, the way people are. You know, and so you know, if you get around something all the time that upsets you, get away from it. Stay away from it. Don't let it be a part of your life that you keep it all the time, because you're going to be in a bad humor. You're going to be upset before you know it, and it just don't work out. Let's go over to the New Testament for a little bit here and see if we come up with some stuff here. In 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 20. This is a whole list of things here. Let's see, now who hadn't I? Tina? You want to read that?
I already read it.
You already read it? No, Linda, you ain't read.
For I fear lest when I come, I shall not find you such as I would, and that I shall be found unto you such as ye would not, lest there be debates, envious, wraths, strifes, backbiting, whisperings, swellings, and tumults.
Turmoil. All right, listen to these things that she just read in case y'all didn't get it all. For I fear lest there be debates, envyings, wrath, strifes, backbitings, whisperings, swellings, and turmoils. Have you ever been around somebody that just likes to stir up trouble? Anybody ever been around somebody like that? Huh? Don't be calling out people's names. It ain't good. Terry, I hate it for you. She needs to repent on that. Sometimes people are that way, and that's what we're talking about. Debate, envyings, wrath, strife, backbiting, whispering, swellings, turmoils. You know, there's people out there that they thrive in stirring up trouble. You know, they really do. And that's not a good thing. That's just not a good thing. It's not the Christian attitude. And then we're talking about things from the Bible. You know, this is how the Bible expects us to be as a Christian. We can't be the person that loves to just stir up problems all the time. We just can't do that. I mean, it's just not something that we need to be about, because it will cause people eventually not to want to be around you. You know, and you can alienate yourself. If you're a person that stays mad all the time and angry all the time and upset and negative all the time, you can really alienate yourself with that. And that's not something that the Bible says we ought to be about. And you know, there's not a lot. If you're a person that really and truly has emotions from the standpoint of right and wrong. If you turn on something and you know it's wrong and you sit there and you let it continue on, it won't be long till your emotions is all messed up. You know, you'll be upset. It's like Bobby said, you know, you'll get to a point where you don't feel good no more. I mean, it's bad stuff. Bad stuff. I mean, that's the reason, you know, with me, I mean, you know, medicine is a gun. You know, not to shoot nobody, but I get it and clean it up and go outside and shoot a while and all. And that's medicine for me. But, you know, a lot of people don't have an outlet. They just let that get to the point they just can't stand it, you know. All right, let's talk about Ephesians 4, verse number 26 and 31. Ephesians 4, 26 and 31. You want to read it, Terry? Okay.
4:26 and 31.
Ephesians 4, 26 and 31.
Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice.
Okay. Be ye angry and sin not, let not the sun go down on your wrath. What does that mean? I mean, just get mad, but get glad. That's the way my grandpa used to tell us. He'd say, boy, you get mad, but you better get glad. And you know if you didn't get glad, you was going to have something to be mad about. But the bottom line is, this will work. Don't let the sun go down upon your wrath. You get mad, you get upset, you get angry, but don't let it stay with you. Get over it and move on to something else. Something that'll make you feel better. Because, you know, anger, it doesn't help. It harms. And he said, let all bitterness, wrath, and anger, and clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. So, you know, try your best to control those things that you say, those things you do. Put a little bit more control in your life as far as what we're talking about here. Anger is not good. It's not a good emotion to have. There's nothing wrong with being angry and upset because, you know, sometimes you get angry. I stay angry at how our world is transformed into what it is, but there's nothing I can do about it except, you know, go to the poll and vote, you know, and hope and pray that, you know, there's other people out there that feel the same way I do, you know. But I think that one of the ways to overcome anger is 1 Timothy 2 and 8. 1 Timothy 2 and 8. Alan, I'm gonna let you read that one. I don't hardly ever call on you. I let you read that in 1 Timothy 2 and 8.
Well, therefore, that men pray everywhere. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. That's good. Read it.
Lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting.
Okay. Now, when you think about this, you did good, Marilyn. She just had her ears fixed the other day. Y'all don't. Alan, you be looking at James 1:19. We're gonna go there. But anyway, let's go back to this one that she just read there, and Alan be looking up James 1:19 and 20. But listen to this verse that she just read to us. I will therefore that men pray everywhere, lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting. Now, when we pray, let's don't be pray. Now, I've been guilty of this. I've been mad before in prayer. I get upset, you know, and I've been mad when I pray to God, and that's not good. When I say I'm mad praying to God, I've prayed against certain things before and been upset about it. You know, I don't like anything to do with the political realm of the opposite side of where I'm at. You know, I'm an ultra conservative, and the biblical principles mean a lot to me. So I don't like liberalism, and I don't like the other side. And so I've been mad before when I was praying, and that's not good, because I think God doesn't, you know, it does have a hindrance to you. Pray with holy hands and without wrath and without doubting. Don't let it get to you. Now, Alan, if you'll read James 1:19 and 20.
Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man
tell you what, now you're talking about a powerful verse of Scripture about anger. You know, this is a powerful one. Be swift to hear and slow to speak. Now, sometimes that's a part of controlling your anger. Be swift to hear, slow to speak. You know, think about what you say before you say it. You know, sometimes you can avert a lot of problems if you're real careful about exactly what this verse teaches. Swift to hear and slow to speak. Then you think about this. The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. You know, if anybody was going to ever be angry, it would have to be God, you know, with the way the world is, you know. And when you think about this, you know, that's something to consider, the wrath of man. It doesn't work righteousness. It's not the righteousness of God. God doesn't want that. He doesn't expect that. Now, here's where we're going to go for just a few minutes, and I want to show you something here. You know, I keep saying about how we ought to be before God. But, you know, mankind can do things to cause God to be angry. And, you know, God is like, he's not like man in a sense, but he has an anger. And, you know, when you think about the anger of God, you know, and I read a lot of things today when I was trying to decide what I wanted to talk about today, and I was thinking, you know, my goodness, help us all never to really infuriate God to the point of becoming angry, because when you read back in the Bible about God's anger, you don't want God to be angry, you know, because God could very easily, with a word spoken, he could take it all away. So let's go to Exodus 22 and 24. Now, in this passage, the children of Israel is leaving out from under Egyptian bondage, and they go out and they begin to complain constantly about all the things that's going on, and they complain to God, and they continuously complain to God. Pam, up front, would you read Exodus 22 and 24?
My wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless.
Okay. He said, my wrath is going to wax hot, and I'm going to kill you with a sword, and your wives will be widows, and your children fatherless. God was upset with them, and his anger was kindled against them. And when you think about God's anger, you know, God acted out, you know. In several occasions in the Bible, I begin to see how it was that God says, you don't do this. But then on the other hand, you know, don't make God, don't do things to disappoint or make God angry at you. And so it's a very serious matter. You know, the children of Israel had to try God's patience, and they did in Exodus 33 and 5. All right, other Pam over here, read it for me, Exodus 33 and 5.
So the Lord had said unto Moses, say unto the children of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. I will come up unto the midst of thee in a moment, and consume thee. Therefore now put off thy ornaments from thee, that I may know what to do unto thee.
When they began to worship idols, and they began to put God aside, this angered God to the extent, and then when she's reading this, he said, you're a stiff-necked people. I'm going to come up in the midst of thee. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to consume thee. So you put off all your ornaments and your idols from thee, that I may know what to do unto thee. Now, you know, when you think about that, that's something to consider, causing God's anger to be kindled against you. That's a terrible thing to think about. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I know that there's complaints made in lots of ways. Gary Anderson, let's let you read Numbers 11, verse 1.
Now the people complained about their hardships in the hearing of the Lord. And when he heard them, his anger was aroused. Then fire from the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp.
Okay, read verse 10.
Moses heard the people of every family wailing, each at the entrance of his tent. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled.
Okay. Now, Moses heard the people weep throughout all of what their families were. God was destroying them. Every man in the door of his tent. The anger of the Lord, the Bible says, was kindled greatly against them. Now, God got upset with them because of the fact the people complained. I wonder how many of us have ever complained. Think about that for a moment. Most all of us, from time to time, we complain. And when we complain, it may be heard from the standpoint of somebody on the other side we're complaining to, but, God, in this instance, He had done so much for these people, but yet they complained. And, a long time ago, Grandpa Murphy used to say, before you get to a point where you complain about God, begin to count your blessings. Count everything that's good in your life before you start counting the things that's bad in your life. And that makes a big difference in how things are as far as wrath is concerned. The Lord's wrath was kindled against these people greatly, and He killed a lot of them because of this. And that's a sad, sad situation. All right, let's see if we can go to Numbers 32 and 10 through 13, and we'll get that one. Let's go outside. All right, can you read that? This is Numbers 32, 10, and 11, and 13.
So the Lord's anger was aroused on that day, and He swore an oath, saying, surely none of the men who came up from Egypt, from 20 years old and above, shall see the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me.
13.
So the Lord's anger was aroused against Israel. He made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of the Lord was gone.
Hey, y'all think about how that worked. I mean, this is a time whenever they upset God to the extent they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years trying to find the promised land because they didn't do what God required of them. And God got all upset with them. His anger was kindled against them. And the reason His anger was kindled against them, they constantly complained about anything and everything. They began to worship idols. And God, His anger was so to the point they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years trying to find the promised land. And God made it that way. His anger was kindled against them, He said, and He made them wander for 40 years in the wilderness. Well, let's see here. We get one more. There was a time whenever I was reading over in the book of 1 Samuel. Y'all be turning over there to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 28 and 18. 1 Samuel 28 and 18. All right, let's see here. Let's get my little niece in the back there on the back bench. You read it for me, Cheyenne.
Because thou obeyest not the voice of the Lord, nor executest His fierce wrath upon Amalek, therefore hath the Lord done this thing unto thee this day.
Okay, God got all upset because He had told them what to do, and Amalek was to be killed. Didn't carry it out. God's wrath was kindled against them. Now, God expects, when He says to do this or do that, He expects us to do it. When He says don't do it, He expects us not to do it. And God's anger at this point in time, He was using it in an open forum. Now, God's anger today will be used in judgment. And that's how that's going to work. I don't know. Somebody asked me the other day, do you think God still works the way He did in society today? I don't know enough to think from the human side, if we don't do what's right, we're going to suffer. and we're going to suffer a lot of things. And sometimes it may be that God's in it, and it may be that God's not in it, because wrongdoing doesn't bring about good outcomes. But at the same time, bad things happen to good people. Y'all know that? Bad things happen to good people. But whenever we're bad people, bad things happen to us too, you know. And there's not much we can say about that except to understand that during the process of time, God's anger was kindled against people that didn't do what God required them to do. I think it's still that way today. I think God's wrath is still there. He may not use it in the same terms that he did here, but God still gets upset when people sin. Sin is not a way to appease God. You know, there is an element of sadness with God because he did create man, from the standpoint that God didn't always do, man didn't always do what God required of him. Do y'all remember a fellow by the name of Uzzah? Anybody remember that story of Uzzah? Okay, that's one time that I thought, you know, maybe God could look at that, but that's not the way God does. We can look at things from the human standpoint that it's not so bad, we're not going to do this or we're not going to do that. But look at God's anger. You know, they were not to touch the Ark of the Covenant. And whenever he put his hand out to stay the ark, to keep it from falling over, you know, God killed him. Well, now, somebody said, well, that's far under what God, no, it's not. If God said, do this, we need to do it. If God said, don't do this, we don't need to do it. And this kind of shows what God's intent is with God's anger. So the Bible said in 2 Samuel 6 and 7, because our time's up tonight, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah. He was upset with Uzzah. Well, what was it he was upset about? Because Uzzah was a human being and made a mistake. Yeah, but God said don't do it. And it was no justification for what he did. So God's anger was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error. That's what it said. And there he died by the ark of God. So, you know, my point tonight is we've studied about man's anger and we've studied about God's anger. Now, God deals with man the same today as he did back then, except for the fact that I think today, you know, God don't expect us to go through life being angry and upset and mad all the time. And you know, it's all right to be upset sometimes about certain things because, you know, we can't help it. We're human beings. But it's not all right to break the laws of God in a fit of anger. That's not a good thing. And so if we can manage that, we need to manage it, you know. Nadab and Abihu offered up strange fire to heaven, and God smote them for it. And you know, he was upset with that because they disobeyed and didn't do what God required. I thought about tonight, you know, anger is one of those things that causes lots of problems in people's lives. Now, I don't do marriage counseling no more, but, you know, I remember one particular couple years ago, and when they came to me to talk to me about their marriage, of course, it didn't work out for them, but the main problem was that the man couldn't control his anger, and he stayed mad all the time and angry all the time. And what they was trying to do was figure out a way for him not to do that. And they even went to a medical doctor, you know, but he was an angry person. He was raised up to a point where he was angry all the time. And so they came to me to talk to me, and I said, well, you know, all I can tell you is, you know, think about your actions before you do them. You know, try to put your mind in gear. And think about it. And he said, it didn't work. Well, it didn't work. They didn't make it. So it's a sad thing when anger can't be controlled. And, you know I've been there. Every one of us has lost our temper before. And we don't need to do that. Okay, we're going to ring the bell and get the kids in.